Hope you're having a great day and hope you had a great weekend. Welcome to the Ricky Mathews Show, where we continue to celebrate so many amazing people who are working so hard to make this place such a special place to live, work, and play. Hey, listen, I was thinking about my friend Roland Weeks over the weekend, and Roland is a special guy. He was my boss and my mentor for so many years. When we started the One Coast Awards, which was the Sun Herald Leadership Awards back when I was publisher, became publisher in 2001, and I had this vision to start these awards in 2002, and I wanted to sort of give Roland his due credit. He'd been publisher of the Sun Herald for so long, and he worked so hard in the community and with me in particular, helping me see that this region is going to be stronger working together than if we were to work separately. And he said that you just kind of drove it in my head that for so many years Jackson didn't have to pay attention to coastal Mississippi because we're so busy fighting amongst ourselves. And we've made a lot of progress over many years, finding what makes each of the cities so unique and each have their own special sense of place, but at the same time finding our common issues. And anyway, I was thinking a lot about Roland. Roland was such a great leader, and he's such a good friend. And we continue to honor him by having people go into the Roland Weeks Hall of Fame as part of the now One Coast Awards. It was passed over to the chambers along the way, and we continue to recognize these people. They deserve the recognition, but also they deserve to be held up as examples. You'll get tired of me saying that, but this is an opportunity for them to inspire others to want to give back. And today's guests are terrific. We've got two of them actually. In the first half of the show, we're going to be joined by Nikki Johns, who is a really, really important principal at AGJ Systems and Networks. And she's the business development manager there. And then we'll be joined by another One Coast winner in the second half of the show. So without any further ado, let me invite my friend Nikki into the conversation. And just first of all, just say good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Ricky. I'm great. How are you?
It's good to see you. Listen, one of the things that's interesting about you, Nikki, is that you have been a leader for many, many years in the community. And I find that there's a common thread to a lot of the One Coast Award winners. And that is that you see a wonderful link between what you do in your day job and the community. The more you learn about the community, it makes you better in your day job. But giving back to the community is something that we're going to get into this in just a second, but it's someone inspired you along the way to want to give back. Where did that come from?
I will tell you that probably came originally from my old boss, Dennis Burke at the People's Bank.
Yeah.
I worked for Dennis for many years, and I started my career in business development with him. And he was kind of a role model for me, and I watched, how involved he was. And when I decided that this was going to be my home, that obviously I wanted it to be better than what it was, and it started there.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to work with Dennis in the community in so many different iterations, and then worked very closely with Chavis in a lot of respects. And they sort of bred into People's Bank this culture of wanting to give back to the community, and obviously it inspired you along the way. But once you see it, once you begin to understand that your contribution can make a difference, it has a way of wanting you to do, urging yourself to want to do more, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's tough to say no when somebody asks me to do something or volunteer to serve a role.
And you've done so much along the way. So we'll get into some of that here in just a second. But let's real quick about AGJ Systems and Networks. You've been there since 2015. You're the business development manager. I'm sure your career in banking really helped you in this respect. But what does AGJ do, and what are you up to these days?
Well, AGJ is a managed technology provider. We manage IT for small and large businesses, municipalities. We have a heavy focus on security, cybersecurity, and there's a lot of that these days. So you ask what we spend our time doing, it's fighting the bad guys.
Well, I was a CEO at a digital media company, led newspaper companies and informed digital media companies as part of advanced Condé Nast, the largest privately owned media company in the United States, and I became a regional president for them. And it won't surprise you to learn that as a media company, the IT support and the type of people that were engaged in making sure that we had networks that were safe, that had the media side of what we did was so important. Making our website safe, making sure that we had all the latest cybersecurity pieces in place. I mean, it was a full-time job for that team, and a lot of companies can't afford to have that, and that's why AGJ comes in, because keeping up with this, because it changes almost every day. Staying up with this is hard for most companies to do. In fact, most companies can't. And so that's why they end up going to someone like AGJ Systems and Networks. It's getting more complicated instead of less complicated, and it creates a great business model for you guys, doesn't it?
It does. You're spot on with that. And even if organizations can't afford internal IT, it takes a team these days. And I think we learned with COVID, people are in and out, and they were in quarantine, and you can't be one deep in your technology anymore.
So you went to the University of Southern Mississippi. I did as well, to the top. Got a great education, and tell me about growing up. You're a native of Ocean Springs. You've been on the Gulf Coast your whole life. When did you know that banking was going to kind of be your thing?
I didn't until I started doing it.
Uh-huh.
I went to school at Mississippi State, and I realized quickly that I could not stand to be away from the water. So I moved back home from Starkville and attended University of Southern Mississippi on the Gulf Coast. And I started my career at People's Bank while I was in school. And I quickly learned that I really liked business. I was actually an education major, and I really liked business, and I enjoyed what I did, and that became my career path.
Well, that's good. And then you went to the Mississippi School of Banking at Ole Miss.
I did.
Hit
them all.
So you got to People's and kind of established yourself, and then they saw something in you and began to develop you, and kind of the rest is history. That ultimately led to the opportunity you had to jump over. I think 2015, right? I'm saying that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I spent some time at Community Bank, and then AGJ. Okay,
so along the way, though, you got heavily involved in things like the Ocean Springs Rotary and United Way, and the list goes on and on. You didn't just join these organizations; you wanted to lead them. Talk to me about that?
Well, I think early on in my career, I knew, especially since I started in business development at such a young age, being a young female on the Gulf Coast in business was somewhat intimidating. And I knew that if I was going to meet people and grow in my career, then I was going to have to get involved, and I was going to have to get heavily involved, like real involved. Yeah. So, I started getting involved in different organizations, the chamber, the Coast Chamber mainly, and Biloxi Main Street organization. And from there, I just started taking leadership roles in different areas, and it hasn't stopped.
Well, often said, because I was heavily involved in the community too throughout my career, big times. Before, I think a lot of the work that I was involved in before Katrina really set the stage for me to be able to work with Governor Barber on the recovery efforts, and then went to Alabama. And the oil spill happens, and I led the oil spill recovery planning efforts for Governor Riley. But everything kind of, it's like putting layers on an onion of opportunities to want to give back to the community. But what I often said was, if you want to find somebody that needs to do something in the community, then find a busy person. And because that's true, isn't it?
It's very true. Very true.
And they have a way of organizing themselves and knowing what needs to be done, and so on. So you got recognized in 2018 as a top 10 under 40. So then in 2023 you got recognized as top 10 community leaders. and you've in a lot of ways you're just getting started. So you've got big contributions to make in the future. I mean, when you think about what you want to do with your community involvement, do you have a goal specifically, or you just say yes and take it wherever it takes you?
I think I kind of take it wherever it takes me. I don't necessarily have a goal. I just know where I'd like to see our community in 10 years. I'll tell you, being involved in the Gulf Coast Business Council Master's Program was very eye-opening for me, and I did that. I was actually in 2 classes. I participated in 2 classes, and most recently their kind of All-Stars program where they brought a lot of us back. And again, we have a lot of ideas. I'd like to see, some regional alignment, and that's really what I'd like to see in the next.
Nikki, let's talk about that on the other side. But we're meeting with Nikki Johns, and she's a recent One Coast Award winner, and we'll pick up the conversation right there when we come back on the other side. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. We're joined by Nikki Johns, who works with AGJ Systems Networks. She's a business development manager there and heavily involved in the community. That's the reason she was once again recognized at the One Coast Awards, and we're sort of celebrating that part of it and giving you a chance to see what it takes to be a leader in the community. When we went to break, you were mentioning about the Master's program and sort of the Master's All-Star. I talk about this a lot on the show, Nikki, this notion around leadership development. We can't talk about that enough because it is, as you pointed out, you have a very specific thing that struck you about your involvement in the Master's program, but people say that you've had multiple leadership development programs that you've been involved in. Every one of them brings sort of a different angle to the conversation, but it's about gaining perspective, isn't it? It's about seeing sort of how coastal Mississippi fits into the bigger picture and how what we can do to sort of advance the ball. Leadership development is critical, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yes.
So, if you were to say something to someone who's thinking about being a leader in the community, what would they expect to get out of being involved, whether it be Leadership Gulf Coast or Leadership Jackson County or Leadership Hancock County or the Master's program at the Gulf Coast Business Council? What would you say to them about why they should be involved?
Well, I think each of those programs are so diverse, and the class selection is so diverse, is that you get to see different perspectives from different industries, different leaders, from different areas, from all across the coast. And I think that's important. It's eye-opening to see how different things are in Hancock County, from Jackson County. And I've participated, in Jackson County, Leadership Jackson County, and Leadership Gulf Coast, and those are 2 very different programs.
Yeah, what's interesting about the Master's program, I talked to Jamie Miller about this just in the past week, is that what they used to do, and they still will do some of this, is go outside of Mississippi and visit another market, and they've been, but more focused inside of Mississippi recently. Were you actually engaged in any of those trips inside Mississippi?
I was, and that's what I think differentiates that program from the others, is that you see an outside perspective. We went to Atlanta the first year that I participated, and the things that they're doing in Atlanta, just with the Atlanta Regional Commission and Georgia Main Street, they have some great ideas and things that they're implementing over there that I would love to bring back here and see happen here on the coast.
Yeah, what's interesting too about the trips on the inside of Mississippi is that we get a chance to learn from and also kind of maybe get a flavor to who some of our competitors might be. One of the things about coastal Mississippi that you've learned well through your involvement in the community and through these leadership programs, one of the things that's unique about coastal Mississippi is that the best thing about it is it's a collection of a large number of political subdivisions. The worst thing about it is it's a collection of a bunch of political subdivisions. So to be successful, the amount of communication that is required to touch the boards of supervisors across coastal Mississippi, to touch the legislative leadership across them, the mayors and all the the administrators and all that. It is a lot. It's a lot. But the key to our success is in alignment. Now, we're not always going to get everybody aligned, but man, ultimately, the fact that we can share some common issues on a sort of a one coast banner, that's going to be a key to our success going forward for sure, isn't it?
Absolutely. We have to be one coast. We have to be one voice because, at the end of the day, a lot of times it's us against the rest of the state.
And the rest of the Southeast, for that matter.
Right.
Yeah, the truth. Yeah, we've got. I think Jerry St. Pé said it best. I've quoted him many times here. Actually, in my 20th anniversary speech at the One Coast Awards, I said this as well. That Jerry St. Pé, the former president of Ingalls, he maintains that one of our biggest challenges is complacency, and his issue is that Chevron and Ingalls will always be there, and the blue chip industries that are part of Stennis Space Center will always be there, and the casinos and hospitality will always be there, that we take those things for granted. And the reality is that none of those things are guaranteed that they're going to be there. So if we're not constantly thinking about what's the next thing, how can we overcome our weaknesses and accentuate our opportunities, then we're going to be walking backwards. And this notion of accepting the status quo is something we can't do. We have to advance the ball, because the truth is these other communities like Huntsville, Alabama, and Tupelo and the Golden Triangle and other communities are getting their act together, and they're wanting us to falter in our pursuance of our goals, because then it'll make us less of a competitor. But man, we have a lot going for ourselves, don't we?
We do, and that's exactly what I was about to say, Ricky, is that we have a lot more competitors than we used to, and even with gaming, and we need to keep our guard up, and we need to keep things moving in the right direction. We can't get complacent. I think we saw that with COVID. There's no doubt about it. And as leaders come up, I think we're all talking the one coast mantra more than we ever have. When I became publisher in 2001, we launched what is called the South Mississippi Strategy. Our goal is to focus on making sure that we're sharing information from across the coast, and our editorials often spoke about us coming together as a region. It's something you got to stay on top of. You got to keep communicating about it. Some of our elected officials, unfortunately, don't sign up for that. They don't really want that, and I think that's where leadership comes in. It says, okay, if someone's not on board with us, we need to accentuate them and help them get on board, or maybe we need to elect someone else. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Gulf Coast Business Council's recent launching of a political action committee is going to be really important, because they're saying we're going to raise tens of thousands of dollars, and we're going to start supporting candidates that get that. The thing that makes us unique is that we have these unique cities, each with their own special sense of place. But at the same time, we've got common issues around infrastructure and other things that are important to us. And we've got to be able to do both. We've got to be able to respect the unique diversity that exists in each of the places. At the same time, we can have no hesitancy about finding our common issues and working together on those issues. And anyone who doesn't buy into that, we're gonna have a pack now that's going to be focused on moving the ball forward and finding someone who does get it. I mean, that's the kind of work we have to do, though, isn't it? It is, and that's exciting. And you make the point that not everyone is on board, but what I will say is we have a lot more on board now than we did 5 years ago, and that's progress. Participating in the program for the first time, I guess 4 or 5 years ago, and then again recently, there's been a lot of changes, and I've met a lot of great leaders who are ready and willing to implement these changes. So it's exciting.
It really is. It really is. It takes focus. I think that's when we formed the Gulf Coast Business Council after Hurricane Katrina, we saw that as sort of this regional organization, because you've got the Jackson County Economic Development Foundation, really a great best practice of a public-private partnership, and you got all these different economic development approaches that are happening along the coast, but you don't have a single entity that brings the business community together and has the CEOs. Now you see, we can have second and third tier involvement, but the way to have success is you have to have the CEOs involved. So when you have the CEO of Ingalls and all the major banks and so on involved in the business council, you have a chance to really advance the ball. Because as Roland taught me early in my career, those with the resources and the employees are the ones who have the power. So if you have the ability to direct your employees in a certain direction, or you have the ability to contribute your money in such a way that you can bring about change, that's the way you bring about change in the community. And I think the Business Council sort of brings them together in that way. And through the master's program that you've had the opportunity to go through twice now, you get a chance to really see all of that in action. And this is all about advancing the ball, that's for sure. So lastly, before we go, I'm just curious, as you speak to young people who are wanting to be leaders in the community, what do you say to them?
Get involved early. When people get to know you and your character in other aspects and see you giving back and wanting to do more for the community, then they get to know you as a person, and then they trust you, obviously, with their business. But get involved and get heavily involved.
Get involved. Well, you said this before, but there's a direct relationship between your business doing well and you not saying no in the community, isn't there?
There is. Like I said, I've made many friends. I've made longtime friends that I've met in some of these leadership programs through my early stages in the chamber, and those are people I can count on, and they know that they can count on me.
So how that might look is this: someone maybe tapped into their network that shouldn't be there, and they said, wait a minute. Nikki's in that business. I'm going to call Nikki and find out more about how they can help us, because we just looked into the training, and to do this, to get up to speed internally, we don't have the resources to do it. And then they call in Nikki, and then the rest is kind of history. But it works, doesn't it?
It works.
Hey, listen, Nikki, congratulations to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Ricky. I enjoyed being on the show.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you. This has been Nikki Johns, and she's a One Coast Award winner from AGJ Systems and Networks, and someone we'll probably have back on the show soon. We'll bring you back on to talk about cybersecurity, because one of the most important topics we can talk about today. Okay, we'll see you when we come back from this break.
All right, bye-bye.